Hey, this is Joe at graybenchelec. Welcome back to the pedal teardown series where I take apart new and interesting pedals and show you what's going on inside. Today we have the Marshall Vintage Reissue Bluesbreaker. Alright, so this is the reissue Marshall put out for the Bluesbreaker pedal. Very famous pedal. The original versions have been used by a whole host of artists, probably most famously by John Mayer. There are now 3 Marshall branded versions of the Bluesbreaker. There's the original version made in England. There is the, I believe, Korean made reissue version. And now this vintage reissue version, which is also made in England. The Bluesbreaker here is also one of the most frequently cloned pedals. The most well known, of course, being the Analog Man King of Tone, which is 2 Bluesbreakers in a box. Prince of Tone is a single Bluesbreaker. You also have the JHS Morning Glory. The Snaus Black Box is another very popular clone of the Bluesbreaker, or close derivatives. But this, of course, is a Marshall branded one, reissued for the pedal market. And as you can see here, it is in fact made in England. So the reissue here comes in a nice cardboard box. We have an outer sleeve. Going inside, we have the pedal with its own little cardboard sleeve, or cardboard sort of holder inside the box. Instruction manual, probably some sort of warranty guide or something. Gives you some gain settings, information about the pedal. One thing that's noteworthy is Marshall went to the extra trouble of not doing extra. They knew that for a while now, if people wanted the Bluesbreaker sound, they could get it in a variety of different clones. And they came to the realization that the Bluesbreaker Marshall version is popular because it is the actual version used by famous artists. And so if they went and did a whole bunch of modifications and a new enclosure and all that, it would have taken away from why people would have bought this as opposed to a King of Tone or a Morning Glory or whatever. And so I think Marshall got it right by going with the original stamped enclosure and the original shape. This would have been an extra expense they didn't have to do. This could absolutely fit into like a 1590 BB. They got the Marshall logo embossed. They got the original knobs. They made it in England, which they could have had it made overseas as well. Same battery compartment door, same foam padding. So they just took the extra steps to make it original to the original version, which is why people would end up buying this and not a clone. Smaller little foot switch paddle here. I'm assuming this is closer to the original. Obviously the regular 3-pull double throw. Foot switches have bigger, I don't know, foot covers here, little actuator pieces that would have been easier to get. Input and output jacks on the top, DC jack, center negative standard. Little red LED, 3mm red LED there. So it looks like an original Bluesbreaker. At least it does on the outside. Let's go ahead and crack it open and see what it looks like on the inside. Alright, so here is the PCB or PCBs for the Marshall Bluesbreaker reissue. So starting out, we have 2 separate PCBs. The input and output jacks and the DC jack are on their own board. Probably a filter cap here, some resistors here for maybe giving a half power supply for the op amps, protection diode, maybe a little filter resistor there. 1/4-inch jacks are PCB mounted plastic jacks. Soldering looks pretty much perfect overall, probably done by a machine. We do have a battery snap, and it is strain relieved through the board, through little individual holes, which is interesting. See that there? Those are soldered on. They're actually just tacked on to little solder pads. I don't think they're, yeah, they're not holes, so they're just sort of tacked on there. With string relief, I think that's probably fine. You probably could have also just made that a through hole and soldered it, so it would have had adhesion on both sides of the board with solder, but this is probably okay with the string relief. And a plenty long battery cable here to connect down to the bottom of the enclosure here. You need a little longer battery snap for that. That's connected with a ribbon cable up here to the main PCB. I believe these are Vimex pots with the PCB mounting little tabs here. The volume control is an audio 100K. The tone control is a linear 22K. I think the original schematic calls for a 25. 22K, 3K difference is not going to make a big difference to the tone. And a gain is 100K. I believe this on the original schematic was a linear 100K, so that's an interesting change. Usually if they're going to make that change, it's just going to make it a more consistent sweep across the gain knob. I don't know if that's a known or was a known issue for the original Bluesbreaker or not, but that is one difference. So we have audio or logarithmic 100Ks for gain and volume, where the original had a linear 100K for gain. Clipping diodes here, soft clipping diodes are in the feedback loop for the op amp. They do appear to be standard silicon switching diodes like 1N914 or 1N4148. Op amp is a TLO72, probably Texas Instruments. Yeah, Texas Instruments TLO72. Standard through-hole construction. I'm assuming just like the original. I actually haven't been inside an original pedal, but I'm assuming that this is probably the same PCB layout. Why reinvent it? And you're doing a vintage reissue, so might as well just go with the original design. It's what people want, it's what people like, so might as well. It also makes it really easy to modify if you wanted to swap out this op amp for like the op amp that King of Tone uses. I think is a or 4580. I think it is. I don't know. I'll put there'll be text at the bottom here if I'm wrong about that. Whatever the op amp is for the King of Tone. You probably could also find a place to splice in the hard clipping diodes. That's one of the changes with the King of Tone. King of Tone has the clipping diodes in the feedback loop, the soft clipping diodes, but they also have hard clipping diodes, which can be turned on or off. The original Bluesbreaker only has the soft clipping diodes. Plenty of opportunity and ease to modify this circuit because it's all through hole. There's plenty of room. Everything's laid out pretty plainly. It's a simple circuit, so plenty of opportunities to modify if you wanted to. The enclosure is stamped sheet metal, looks like 18 gauge. They did put stickers over the places where they wanted ground connection to the enclosure to avoid the powder coat getting into that area. And yeah, I think Marshall just did a pretty good job. People wanted the original pedal, and Marshall just built it. They built it in England, apparently. It looks like it was tested here by Jody. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the Marshall Bluesbreaker. Let's go ahead and put it back together. All right, that was the Marshall Bluesbreaker Vintage Reissue. If you have any questions or recommendations for a pedal you want to see on an upcoming teardown episode, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing. I'm Joe from Graybench Electronics. Thank you for watching.